I'm Traci Austin, your host of the People Strategy Podcast. This show provides interviews with organizational leaders and ongoing coaching experiences that highlight elevating people in organizations through a people strategy roadmap. Our guest today is Coye Harrett. Coye had a vision, and that vision was to make rivets right here in America and make sure they're the best ones out there. He's dedicated to expanding the business and putting customers first. And it's that drive that makes Prairie Rivet different from other manufacturers. However, what his bio does not say is it does not talk about the passion and impact that he specifically has for the people in the organization. So Coye's president and owner of Prairie Rivet. And throughout his time owning this organization, he has really focused on what are those key people strategies that we can utilize to allow our folks to have some of the decision making authority and creativity to get the job done in the best way possible. So join me in this great conversation. Coye, it is great to chat again, and I'm really excited to dig into this conversation as you've purchased your first business, and it was a family business that you purchased. I'm so curious, what has been interesting or noticeable to you about culture inside of the organization as you've been running this organization?
Any family business, you can kind of it sometimes it lacks clarity on what the goals are or the vision is, and it's just kind of tail wagging the dog essentially in terms of like what the goals are. And the company I acquired, Prairie Rivet, has a great book of business, great customer base. We've got 26 pieces of equipment that can produce parts for our customers. And one of the appeals to closing on Prairie was the ability to bring in some process and some more like institutional process and practices, I guess, versus just a family job shop, basically. So what we've done is we've implemented EOS. That's allowed us to kind of set a clear vision on where we want to go and helps manage the day-to-day volatility, or the customer A wants this, so now we have to scramble and move over here. Customer B wants that, and we're scrambling and doing something different. Setting these goals and these visions really helps us take out that volatility and keep on the same page of what's really important that we're working towards.
I love what you just said. To work on what's really important that we're working towards, that mission of what you're doing, and then tying that back into the culture for your staff. Tell me a little bit about the how that culture has shifted over the last 3 years.
What we've done is basically just try to set the clear vision, like mentioned before, and giving the employees some latitude to help get there. So we're taking on more work than historically taken on, but it's all within different, the parameters that we can make. But we just have to have different tooling requirements or setup requirements on the machines. So that really enables the employees to step up and be creative problem solvers. And it's, there's no real one cut clear solution every time. So giving the employees some critical thinking ability to play in a sandbox, basically say, all right, this is where we're going. How you get there, there could be 5 different ways, but this is where we need to go.
So, within that, I'm kind of hearing two things. I'm hearing almost a distinction between the outcome of what you're producing and not having such tight control over how that thing actually happens, which what we typically see creates a tremendous amount of trust within the team.
100%. It's been clear to the company base here for our employees and everybody that we're trying to expand in our product offering. We're trying to get new customers, which means new prints for parts, new shipping requirements, things like that for different weights of the boxes or pack units, things like that. And trying to just set that and let them be creative in what's the best way to get there. Is it'd be really easy for an owner, manager, entrepreneur to be able to overzealous and in the weeds of every little problem solving. So what I've tried to do is, and I'm not always the best at it, but just stay out of it and say, this is what the end result needs to be. And I'm trusting you guys to get there. And then I'm going to go work on more business development or whatever it is. It's like a little kid's soccer game. I reference that a lot. It's like in a family shop or even a bigger shop, it'd be really easy sometimes to everybody focuses on one thing as the ball moves around. What we've tried to do is divide and conquer, right? So I need to go over here and work on this to continue moving our goals forward. My general manager needs to go over here. Quality needs to be over here. We all can't be solving the same thing because we'll slow down our goals.
Yeah, and a lot of what I'm hearing you say is really that implementation of EOS, or the entrepreneurial operating system, with what those key rocks are, and where we're increasing the transparency that's happening between the different departments, and we're also increasing the flexibility and the trust in how you do that, as long as we're hitting those outcomes.
100%. 100%.
What do you believe has made Prairie Rivet successful?
Prior to me taking over, it was just the previous owner had it for 30 years. He had it since 1990, and I took over in 2020. It's just getting parts out the door and just servicing the customer base. And it's domestic manufactured. Obviously, we make everything in Wisconsin, in Marksand, Wisconsin. And there's a lot of companies that really like that made in the USA, even prior to the COVID reshoring or nearshoring efforts that have happened. And that legacy book of business was a really good foundation to build off of. And what I've tried to do with the team we have now is just take that foundation and just keep advancing forward and expanding to new customers that may not have heard of us before. There's plenty of people that don't know who we are, but have the same parts or problems that we're solving for other customers.
One of the things I just heard you say is we're utilizing very much what we do really well, is the fact that we're focused here, we're based here, we're made in the USA. And I sense a lot of pride in that. I'm curious, what creates that pride for your staff and what they do day to day for your team?
For them, it's what we've done is try to just share where these parts are going. So I don't want to say the names here just to protect it, but like what the part's going in for, or if it's a door, window, car, whatever it is, they're not just making a widget on our shop floor. They see what's going downstream of where it's going and who might be the end user of that and where that is impacted. Kind of gives an extra sense of pride of what it is. And I think just an innate nature of pride of the made in the USA and competition, right? So we want to be the best and we have employees that are competitive and that's part of, I guess, what helps make us all go to the same goal is we all are looking for the same thing. We want to grow domestic manufacturing and be the best semi-tube solid rivet producer in the market.
It's always figuring out what drives people, what gets them really excited about coming to work every day and doing what that is. And sometimes it's seeing that end result and knowing, hey, it's going to wherever it's going that will have a huge impact, whether that is an office building, a hospital, whatever that is, that they know that their handprint was in something that other people are looking at every single day.
Exactly, exactly. And it shifts the focus, it takes the blinders off basically from somebody who's just coming into the shop to make their widget basically, and then they go home. It kind of gives them the full context. And what I try to do in our weekly meetings is just kind of talk about the new leads that are coming in and who I'm dealing with in the office side, and then kind of share some successes downstream after we fulfilled an order. The customer said, "Hey, that was great. We're going to place another one in a couple months when we run out." And just kind of show them the whole cycle instead of just like come in, look at your order on the board, and then go home, trying to give them the whole picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And those touch points definitely make the bad days so much better.
For sure. For sure. Everybody's going to have their days, but yeah, being able to share those stories and the success stories, or even the ones that we didn't do well, right? There's plenty of them that we have good ones and we have bad ones, just like everybody else. And reviewing the bad ones along with the good and just making sure it doesn't happen again. Because everybody knows it either went well or it didn't. And
Right.
nobody likes it when it didn't go well. And so we just face it head on and fix it.
So this idea, I'm just going to call it mistakes as launch pads, but this idea of the transparency around mistakes and using those mistakes as a launch pad. Tell me a little bit more about how you're utilizing that within your team and the trust that had to be developed in order to bring mistakes front and center.
Incorporated into our weekly meetings, we have these cultural foundations where it's 19 topics. And like there's a few examples that apply to this question of just own it, right? So It says own it, and then your experience is 10% what happens and 90% how you react. Nothing novel that anybody's that's pretty common, but being able to apply that to a situation that somebody says, "Hey, I think I screwed this up. This is how it happened. This is how I missed it. And here's what I'm going to do to fix it so it doesn't happen again." And it just relates to the process. And then another example of this would be we have a bullet that says be process oriented because this is how we can help ourselves from ourselves, basically. We just need to get in a routine and setting us a consistent routine, as with anything, will help mitigate any mistakes that happen. When somebody says they made a mistake, I've told them I'll never be mad if somebody comes to me in the shop or the office and says, "Hey, I screwed up. We need to scrap this," or "I broke this," or whatever it is. I won't be mad as long as they are the ones that tell me. The only time I'll be mad is if it's swept under the rug or if it's from a customer telling us if we missed it, right? So creating that environment, it takes employees a little bit of getting used to, I think, at first. But once the trust is established that I'm not going to lose my mind if something bad happens, I'll just be like, okay, let's fix it. It's worked out. It's reaped benefits for sure.
Looking specifically in a shop like yours, safety becomes a huge priority. And I mean, there's so many things that go along with this from an HR perspective, whether that's work comp, et cetera. And those are all costly. And this, you know, idea of we're ensuring on a day-to-day basis that we're owning it, we're the one that brings it forward. And then from that safety perspective, you're also creating a safe workplace around that because of the follow-up that specifically happens.
For sure. Yeah. The process of when we're setting up a job and it's the machine's not in production, locking out the machine to make sure the electrical motor doesn't kick in and start if your fingers are in the machine working on it. Everybody's got all their fingers and limbs, and we want to keep it that way. The machines can be dangerous. They're simple, but they can be dangerous, right? So you just got to treat the process with respect and knock on wood, we haven't had any issues regarding safety.
And safety is one of those behaviors that you're a safe environment because of the behaviors that you take every single day. Just like culture, we're creating that culture based on the behaviors that we allow or don't allow to have happen. We're talking a lot about your people and the processes you're putting in place to really support them. But tell me a little bit about why you care personally about the folks on your team.
Back to kind of like the family business aspect and like trying to grow it and scale it, it'd be really easy to get in a trap of trying to do everything yourself. It can be an easy trap to fall into, but having people who are in charge of processes is how I view will be able to scale much faster at an efficient, palatable rate. It doesn't overburden any single person in charge of that business unit. But as long as the trust in the employees to get the job done is huge and really goes a long way. Any manager, entrepreneur, owner, whatever, having that trust in your employees to be able to take and run with your vision or your process or your message is is huge. They deliver the results. So really got to just trust in them that they buy into the vision and can help carry it out for you.
And when you're looking at that caring personally about people, and I know we had this conversation previously, but so much of it is understanding who they are and what they want, especially in growth and or not. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we've done meetings with our employees that we call them just our two-on-one meetings. It's the general manager and myself sitting down with employees and just going through what's going well, what's not going well, what we can help with if it's additional training or if they want to further their career in whatever aspect. If they want to be a manager, we'll start giving them opportunities, offloading it from somebody else's plate onto them to slowly get them to where they want to be. So it's just all communication. It just all comes down to communication and getting constant feedback. And I think that's in EOS, and that's also just pretty common sense approach to it. I think is just constantly being in front of them. I'd much rather be accused of over communicating this kind of stuff than being impulsive or secretive or whatever. So we really try to make it clear on what's going on in every aspect of the business.
And, a key piece of communication really comes down to it's not just the communicating, but it's also being curious around what's behind that. And really looking at, all right, based on what's said, how do we think critically about solving problems with communication, and really looking at that curiosity and critical thinking. How do all those kind of interact together? And then how has that impacted your culture?
The own it mentality that we have of just if something bad happens or something good happens, great, let's address it, move on. We also try to encourage everybody to practice blameless problem solving. So it'd be really easy to fall into traps of like, so and so screwed this up because they were the last one to do it, when reality, that's not necessarily fair at all to that person. It just becomes a headbutting situation. So we just say, hey, this situation, objectively, this situation happened. Here's the things that we've done prior to it, and let's work together to fix it going forward. So it's just, blameless problem solving and assuming positive intent. Nobody's doing anything malicious to undermine our goals. It's just stuff happens. So we just try to get the facts and problem solve as best and quickly as we can.
And with that, what I'm hearing kind of between the lines is we perform as a team. And when we perform as a team, all of us are rising together versus that blaming one. So that group accountability, granted individual performance, but it's that group accountability that also moves that forward.
100%. And that's also funny enough, that's one of our other foundationals is we win as a team, we lose as a team. So we're all going to win or we're all going to lose.
Awesome. So, do you have a people or culture development win that happened recently that you want to share?
Yeah, kind of echoing the blameless problem solving. We had a situation where one of our employees was working on a new order that came in and trying to get it set up to run. They got it to like 70%, and then we're struggling to get it the final 30, essentially. And so another employee came over to help and it was like, hey, actually, I think, something you did a few steps ago is the problem here and causing this issue. So it was a really good example of the blameless problem solving, trying to get the facts, and it's just overlooked step that was causing the slowdown. And the two of them worked together on fixing it and got the machine up and running and making parts again. So it's fun. Those are the fun things for me as the owner to see come to fruition because it does take a while to get that mentality down to your employees. And when you see those wins, you just kind of like fist pump, yourself as you go walk in the office. It's just a excited celebration. And so it's really cool to see that.
Absolutely. Creating that mentorship culture, right? Where it's like, hey, we can't all do things on our own. And when we can have that second set of eyes on it, because we all come from very different backgrounds, different experiences, different time on the job, different machines. And when we can pull those together and use that as a strength to turn up each other's strength, that creates that trust that builds it forward. Thank you so much for sharing that story. So, as we start to close today, what is a challenge that you've implemented for yourself and in Prairie Rivet that's really helped you to achieve tremendous results relating to your people?
Yeah, I think go back to the traction example again of just like letting go of the vine, right? So like I've mentioned previously, it's so easy to be nuanced in the weeds, too much, overzealous in the weeds basically, but just setting the clear vision of where we're trying to get to and allowing the rest of the employees to buy in and then trusting that they'll get there through their own process. So, maybe it's not the path I would have gone, but the end result's still the same. There's more than one path or one way of doing things, but as long as the end result is what the goal is of the company or the task or whatever, that's been a challenge that I've challenged myself on, and it's gone well. There's definitely times where you revert back, and then I gotta pull myself out of it and be like, "Time out. This isn't right. I should be letting others manage this." But that's definitely something I always have in the back of my mind. Is like, all right, let go of the vine, let them figure it out, and just like the example I just shared, it usually works out when I do let go and let them figure it out and get us across the finish line.
There was three key insights that stood out to me with the conversation with Coy. The first one was employees' sense of pride in the work that they're doing. The second one was really looking at success stories as touch points to engage staff. And the third was letting go of the vine. So, with any key insight, of course, we want to take that insight, look at what is an action or a people strategy that's aligned to create an outcome. And so, if we look at our first insight, which is an employee sense of pride, what people strategy can you do to really create that or to enhance that inside of the organization? And one of those key things that you can do as a people strategy to really develop that employee sense of pride is figure out what creates that pride for that employee. What are they most proud of? That can be done during the interview process, that can be done through pulse surveys, that can be done through walking the floor. So, when we look at the people data that we have in our organizations and put it back into use using their words, what we heard is, hey, employees really have a sense of pride in the work that they're doing and seeing that out in the world. Okay. So, knowing that, how do we start to collect that data to share it back with them so that they have that? And that really leads to that second insight, which was success as a touch point. So, when we know what those success stories are, we can go back and talk about those with our staff to increase engagement. Specifically, here, we can go back and talk with clients about, hey, what are those things that you are most grateful about the work that we're doing? Guess what? That goes back and helps employees have pride in the craftsmanship that they're doing. When we look at success stories as touch points, it's also, as Coy had stated in our conversation, about really looking at those mistakes as launch pads and creating that culture that, you know what, those mistakes, when we're transparent about them, that we can always learn and we're always in that learning environment. And then that third insight that we had is letting go of the vine. When we talk about letting go of the vine, it's really letting go of the how to really get to that outcome. So, how do we use that as a people strategy? We really look at our culture. What are our cultural values, and how do we have those show up in those key behaviors? Because what we heard from Coy is when we can let go of the vine, we can really focus on the outcomes for our staff and our team and our clients. So that people strategy is that alignment of those core values for the employees and the organization and really generating those key behaviors through acknowledging and rewarding the positive behaviors that we're looking for. Thank you so much for listening today. I'd love to connect with you. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn at Traci, Traci Austin, and at our website at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. If you'd love to learn more about our process, please reach out to us. And again, thank you so much for listening and sharing your feedback with us through a review. Have a fantastic day.